Hello, this is Thana Hysteria, and this is a video about the 12 astrological houses. Okay, so let's get to it. The first house is the house of you as a person, your whole self. It is your physical appearance and your personality. The first house is the same thing as the ascendant/rising sign, okay? And the planet that rules your first house/ascendant/rising sign is your chart ruler. Okay, so the first house is all about who you are. It's about what you're drawn to. It's about your personality. So planets in the first house are going to be the most prominent. That's usually the case. Aspects to your ascendant show you what you attract in this life. Okay, so the first house is the obvious house, the house of I'm here, this is me. So you can look at particular planets to look at the facial structure of someone and in the first house, body shape, you know, extrovert, introvert, those types of things, okay? All personality stuff is the first house. That's just a quick, simple definition. The second house is the house of the physical. So this is usually just defined as the finance house, second house of finances. The second house is the house of the material plane. So, how do I explain this? It also can, planets in the second house can also influence your appearance. The second house is the house of natural talents. It is also the house of you're showing you your ability to make money, how you can make money in this lifetime. Yeah, that's how I would sum it up. That's the second house. It's the you know, the little detail house. You know, that's kind of what I call it. It's, you know, talents, how you make money, that type of stuff. It's a practical house, similar to the sixth house in that sense. It's a practical house. The third house is the house of your communication. It is the house of your thinking patterns. It is the house of your siblings. It is the house of the internet as well. So social media. What else? That is how I would class the third house. Okay, it's ruled by Gemini, all about Mercury related things. That is the third house. It's that simple. So for example, I've got Pluto in the third house, so my voice is more like monotone, it's lower, more slow. That's that, you know, you can figure out things like that. So yeah, the fourth house is the house of your family. It is the house of your roots. Where do you come from? Who are the people that are related to your roots? That's what the fourth house is about. It's about your comfort zone. What makes you feel comfortable? It's also about family, upbringing, all those types of things is the fourth house, okay? Simple as that. So the next house is the fifth house. This is a really fun house. It's the house of short-term relationships, sexual encounters, what else? It is the house of fun stuff, okay? So it's also a very spontaneous house. It is the house of natural, it's also a house of talents. If you look at the fifth house, this is the house of creative talents, okay? Another thing, it tells you about your future children. That's the fifth house. So if you see someone with Neptune, Uranus, maybe even Mars in the fifth house, they tend to be a bit more eclectic. That's usually the case, or something like that. Okay, sixth house. This is the house of colleagues. This is the house of, you know, day-to-day jobs, like that type of stuff. It's a practical house. I find the sixth house a little bit boring, but it tells you a lot about, you know, what types of odd jobs you might have, or what kind of colleagues you're going to have, maybe even enemies, that type of thing. It's a practical house. It's also a house of health, okay? It's a house of alchemy. It is ruled by Virgo. So yeah, that type of thing. People with sixth house placements might be drawn to more natural remedies. They might have more odd jobs growing up, that type of thing. The next house is the house of partnerships, which is the seventh house. No, it's not just romantic partnerships. It is also business partnerships, friends, best friends. That's the seventh house. It is a house of how you find balance in this life. Remember, it's ruled by Libra. It's a interpersonal house. It's not a you know, there are some houses like the first house that are more self-related. The seventh house is more of an outward house, okay? It's like, how do you relate to the people around you? That's the seventh house. The next house is the eighth house. This is the house of inheritance. It's going to show you whether you inherit money from your family or not. It's a house of contracts. The eighth house is much more permanent. Okay, it's that Pluto energy. So it's about contracts, it's about the occult. The 8th house is one of the more diverse houses, I would say. It relates to a lot of different things. So yeah, contracts, the occult. It's also in charge of someone's sexual interests, to put it vaguely. Another thing is, what about, I feel like I'm forgetting something. The 8th house is the house of your obsessions. What are you naturally obsessed with? You might find that someone with Uranus or Neptune in the 8th house might be really interested in tarot, astrology, the occult, stuff like that. The next house is the 9th house. The 9th house is soul school, okay? People with 9th house placements, they tend to face a lot of obstacles in this life, okay? People with Saturn, Mars, Moon in the 9th house, they tend to achieve abundance through difficulty and being forced to grow, okay? That's usually the case. 9th house rules higher education, secondary school, university. It rules long distance travel. Sorry, I forgot to mention the 3rd house rules short distance travel. Okay, so the 9th house is about long distance travel. It's about I feel like I've forgotten something. Travel, it also rules like, what else? Yeah, long distance travel, higher education, alchemy. It is the alchemist's journey, as I like to call it. That's the 9th house. People with restrictive planets in the 9th house struggle with education. Usually there's a lot of obstacles thrown their way. The 9th house is a bit of a polarizing house. Not everybody likes this house because it does require growth, okay? 9th house placements get put through stuff to learn things. That's a guarantee, okay? So the 10th house is the house of your reputation. Who are you known as? The 1st house is who you are. The 10th house is who you're known as, right? They can be completely different things. So the 10th house is also about your career. You'll find a lot of famous people. Remember, the 10th house is also your MC. You'll find a lot of famous people have a North Node MC aspect, okay? They usually also always have a 10th house placement. Always. That's usually the case. 10th house placement can be your ability to achieve fame as well. The 10th house is also about how you present yourself, your reputation, people's first impression. That is the 10th house. It's all about the I don't want to say mask, but people's impression. Okay, that's the 10th house. Yeah, it's a simple house. You know, you see it, you're like, okay, yeah, I can, people see me this way, or blah, blah, blah. The 11th house is about community. It is the house of how do you relate with society. The 11th house is also the house of the future, okay? It is also a house, it's ruled by Aquarius, so it's about people with 11th house placements is not the same as the 10th house. The 10th house is more detached. It's like an objective perspective that people have of you, whereas the 11th house is more about your ability to have influence. You'll find that people with 11th house placements are much more influential than people with 10th house placements. Okay, there's something about people with the 11th house, especially if they have like Venus or Jupiter in the 11th house, Moon in the 11th house. It's like they're able to really connect with people. It's the ability, you know, these are your, I don't want to sound crazy, but these are your cult leaders, the 11th house placements, okay? So yeah, the 11th house also rules technology, it rules networking, okay? So you'll find that people with Venus, Uranus, Mercury in the 11th house are really good networkers, okay? Let's see, 12th house. 12th house. People love or hate the 12th house, okay? I actually like the 12th house. I'm comfortable with it. It's where I feel more comfortable, actually. So the 12th house is the house of your past life. It is the house of, people say karmic debt. I don't really believe in that, but karmic debt. It is the house of karmic relationships. It is the house of the other side. Okay, it's ruled by Pisces. It's the house of anything that's on the other side of the veil, okay? It is also a house of natural psychic gifts. People with 12th, it's the psychic house, okay? People with 12th house placements are usually very psychic. That's usually the case. I've analysed a lot of charts. People with 12th house placements, it's the house of isolation, being detached. People with 12th house stelliums, which means 3 planets in a house, tend to feel very detached from society and detached from themselves in general. The identity of me, who am I? It's a very existential house. A lot of people with 12th house placements will find that they are constantly questioning who they are as a person and what they're here for. So that's the 12th house. I've covered all the houses in 10 minutes. So that's that really. I don't want to, I want to expand more on each individual house. This is what I've remembered off the top of my head. So yeah, bye.